Good news, everyone! Tonight, even the Baptists are taking a pro-trans stand. Alex Consani wins Model of the Year, federal laws you need to know, and more. Good news starts right now. First up, even the Baptists are saying we need to help trans people right now. From Baptist News Global. What will it take for you to care about transgender people? An opinion piece by Mark Wingfield. Of all the people justifiably living in fear of the incoming Trump administration, there is one group that stands out for its vulnerability. And to quote the late Tony Campolo, "You don't give a damn." Campolo is famous for the sermon illustration in which he reported the number of starving children in the world and then declared, "But you don't give a damn." Then he paused and added, "And you're more concerned that I just said damn than you are about the starving children." This is where we stand with the transgender community, only it's really worse. Not only do most of you reading this column not give a damn about trans people, you silently think there's something wrong with them, and they probably deserve the treatment they're receiving. You've been swayed by the bullshit about men dressed as women competing in athletics or the fear-mongering about men in women's restrooms. As horrible as Trump's intents for migrants and women and Democrats and all his various enemies, at least they all have staunch allies to defend them. The transgender community has few allies. Even in progressive circles, it's still socially acceptable to deny the existence of trans folk or to just look the other way. MAGA world has promoted the lie that having compassion for transgender people is simply woke nonsense and that liberals have pushed the agenda too far. I've heard this very argument expressed by my own friends who don't have any trans friends. Here's how I know most of our BNG readers either don't care or have succumbed to compassion fatigue. The readership of every article we publish about protecting the rights of transgender people gets smaller and smaller. My 2016 opinion piece on seeking to understand transgender people remains the most read piece ever on our site, amassing 1 million views across various platforms. More recent articles get read by a couple hundred people at best. Whatever slumber you all are in, it's time to wake up. Real people are in danger. Families are in danger. Lives are at stake. The evangelical community has led the way in scapegoating trans people as the embodiment of everything that's wrong with modern liberalism. Conservative politicians have picked up the song to attract votes, and more moderate and liberal politicians have let them get away with it. Now we have Donald Trump pledging on his first day in office he will, quote, end the transgender lunacy. This is a pledge predicated on a lie. Transgender identity is not lunacy. It is life or death reality. No one wakes up one day and decides they're going to pretend to be transgender. Alarmingly, national polling shows American attitudes towards transgender people are swinging toward rejection rather than acceptance. Whatever gains we made for inclusion 6 to 8 years ago have been wiped out. And even among those who want to protect trans Americans, few are willing to stand up and speak out against the attacks. In this year's election cycle, Republicans spent nearly $215 million on TV ads attacking trans rights, $134 per trans person in anti-trans ad spending. According to researchers who track this stuff, Trump spent more money on anti-trans ads than what he spent combined on ads about housing, immigration, and the economy. And he got away with it. It worked. The transgender community accounts for less than 1% of the US population, which makes them an easy and safe target for persecution. But these are real people from real families. Taking away their rights, taking away their health care, shaming them, scapegoating them, this is truly a death sentence. And if you give a damn, you would speak up for them. Whatever you think you know about transgender people is probably wrong if you don't actually know any transgender people. If you heard their stories, you would know they are sincere. They do not seek attention. It's only the people attacking them who seek attention. Here's the main thing I want to impart for now. Transgender identity is real. It is authentic. You do not have to understand it to accept it. And even if you won't accept it, what harm is there in letting other people live peacefully and in good health? How does the existence of transgender people threaten you other than challenging your too small view of the world? As someone who is not transgender, I am begging you to pay attention, to get educated, to stand up and speak out for one of the most vulnerable minority groups in our society. And I am certain of this one thing. If Jesus were walking among us physically today, he would be eating dinner with some trans folks, and our modern day scribes and Pharisees would be losing their minds over it. Mark Wingfield serves as executive director and publisher of Baptist News Global. Mark, I don't imagine you'll ever see this, but on the off chance you do, thank you. In the wake of the latest former biologist to catch brainworms quitting a humanist association, see last week's Good News for details on that, the free speech bros are up in arms again, asserting in comment sections of seemingly every video across the internet that touches on the subject, nothing is beyond criticism. If that's you, I'm so glad you think so, because it's your turn. Following these recent events, we're seeing a lot of arguments over whether forums are actually free if they don't allow or even promote certain kinds of speech. If you block a person who proclaims the Holocaust was a good thing actually, then that's your right. But if you delete their comments on your webpage, that's censorship. In fact, if you don't seek out and actively platform them, uncritically promoting their ideas for the sake of the discourse, then you, my friend, are acting in opposition to their First Amendment rights. Apparently. It should be noted, not every person is American, and so is not subject to the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It should also be noted, the First Amendment prohibits the government from taking action that stifles speech and free expression, and even that has some reasonable limits placed on it. An editor of a local newspaper once wrote a rebuttal to a similar complaint leveled against his publication. A resident was incensed that his letter to the editor was not published just because he had a controversial opinion on the very legitimate question of whether people of African descent ought to be considered fully human. After all, if nothing is beyond criticism, that's still a fair and good faith question that should not be considered a settled matter, right? The editor's response was simple. I'm not the U.S. government. You, dear reader, are absolutely entitled to publish anything at all you like, just as soon as you set up your own printing presses. Neither I nor the government will stop you, but for you to try to force me to publish your thoughts, legitimate or not, infringes on my freedom of speech to publish as I see fit. What we're seeing today may be thought of as a conflict in social priorities. If you prioritize the concept of absolute free speech above human rights, you put yourself in a difficult position. Because if human rights can be abrogated, then you might find yourself deprived of that right to free speech, because it is a human right. If you prioritize human rights, however, then you might find you have to compromise on free speech from time to time in the interests of the higher order value, but consequently, you also support free expression as well. Either way, absolute free speech doesn't work. It's self-defeating at best, and self-contradictory when you get right down into the entailments. Such entanglements are rarely of a purely academic or philosophical nature, however. One must note, the champions of freedom only seem to appear and advocate when someone prominent faces social consequences for proposing harm to a group of people, often a minority, and often on the basis of illegitimate or bad faith concerns. We only ever see such fanaticism for the absolute sacredity of speech when, for example, a former biologist opines that, current science aside, one group of people makes him personally feel icky, so we ought to throw all of them into gas chambers. Of course, the proposals are generally worded in a much less honest way, but since the thrust of the specious speechist argument is that nothing is beyond criticism, I don't mind pointing out the obvious call to action, so thinly veiled but strongly implied, in such screeds. Perhaps this curious coincidence is due to the fact that when people don't say openly anti-humanist things, they don't face social consequences for breaching the social contract, and so their speech doesn't need that degree of defending. Nonetheless, I can't help but notice the folks who insist on the supremacy of free speech over all other values, because nothing is beyond criticism, seldom seek out and platform any perspectives that are contrary to their presupposition. Apparently, nothing is beyond criticism is itself somehow beyond criticism. And censorship is A-OK if it's your team doing it. To be clear, it is absurd to say that failing to platform ideas you think are harmful is itself censorship. In fact, refusing to do so is part of your own right to free expression. But the absolutists contend that is censorship, which makes them hypocrites. Few, if any, actually believe the things they say, and in the words of libertarian philosopher Terry Goodkind, quote, "Mind what people do, not just what they say, for their deeds will betray a lie." This extremism about free speech isn't about free speech at all, of course. With bad faith actors, it never is about the thing they claim it is. It's just the latest tactic in a long line of nonsense people can throw up as a bailee to protect their logically compromised mott. They haven't the courage of their convictions to outright say they agree with the opinions and solutions, final solutions, of the controversial figure in question, so they deflect to a principle they assume nobody can argue against. I should caveat, I'm aware there are Voltaire-avowing fans of free speech out there who really will defend to the death a person's right to say something they disagree with. I'm a veteran of the U.S. military. I am one such person. I'm not talking about those people here, in part because those aren't the folks clamoring for the latest hate monger to be handed the biggest megaphones available. I'm also not talking about those people here because the principle doesn't apply. Absolutely no one is trying to deny these figures the right to say anything they wish to. But, to call back to that editor I mentioned, they can do it with their own newspapers. I'll close with this. The prime value in any society has to be human rights, partly because civilization is a pointless enterprise without them, and partly because every single other value one could insist should be supreme instead is itself a subset of that one. In a conflict of values, the higher order must take priority, so free speech in itself can never be considered more important than the rights of humans to exist, to have equality under the law, and to prosper as best they're able. Free speech must be a tool in service to that value, because doing it the other way, free speech that intends the erosion or elimination of those rights of any group of people, amounts to an even more severe form of censorship, because the dead can't speak at all. As more states pass anti-trans laws, knowing where federal laws stand could be kind of important. From National Law Review, despite the protection that Bostock versus Clayton County provides transgender employees, many may not feel protected. Why, you might ask? Since Bostock was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2020, many states have enacted laws that limit or ban outright gender-affirming care. Similarly, some states have enacted bathroom access laws that regulate restroom usage. Further, UCLA School of Law's Williams Institute issued a report in November that indicates almost 82% of transgender employees have experienced discrimination in the workplace. States enacting bathroom access laws and laws banning gender-affirming care essentially eliminate mental health care, medical services, and social affirmations that individuals may need. Due to these laws, employers may think they do not need to provide transgender employees and employees who suffer from gender dysphoria with accommodations. Accommodations employers may refuse could include allowing an employee to use the bathroom for the gender they identify as, calling an employee by their preferred pronoun, and or calling an employee by a new name. While Bostock protects gender identity under Title VII, a 2022 case from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, Williams versus Kincaid, provides protection for employees suffering from gender dysphoria under the Americans with Disabilities Act. While the ADA excludes gender identity disorders not resulting from physical impairments from being considered a disability, the court in Williams held that the exclusion is not applicable to gender dysphoria. The court in Williams in part reached its conclusion by stating that advancements in the medical field demonstrate that gender identity disorder is an outdated diagnosis. The court further stated gender dysphoria and gender identity disorder affect different people and have different symptoms. Moreover, the court stated gender dysphoria could result from a physical impairment. Prior to the Williams decision, district courts all over the country had differing opinions on whether gender dysphoria was protected under the ADA. That said, everything changed when the U.S. Supreme Court declined to decide the issue of gender dysphoria protection under the ADA in 2023. Because of that, federal courts have followed the Fourth Circuit's decision in Williams. Despite state laws on gender-affirming care and bathroom access, federal law likely mandates that employers implement policies protecting Title VII and ADA rights of transgender employees and other employees suffering from gender dysphoria. Based on that mandate, employers should ensure their policies are up to date, that they conduct thorough workplace investigations when discrimination claims are made, and that they implement their policies uniformly for all employees, regardless of what the local state laws have to say on the matter. After all, with major corporations, the chief concern is for liability. It's something to consider, a liability issue. Next up, a trans woman wins Model of the Year. From The Signal, Alex Consani won the 2024 Model of the Year award, making her the first transgender woman ever to win this award. Hosted in London, the award has been given under the Fashion Awards for the last 3 decades. The 21-year-old model began her career at the age of 12, making her the youngest transgender model at the time. Consani has worked with powerful names in the fashion industry, such as Tom Ford, Gianni Versace, Coco Chanel, and Alexander McQueen. She was also the first trans woman to walk in the 2024 Victoria's Secret fashion show. Her unique, authentic, and outgoing personality was not only attractive to modeling agencies, but also made her very influential online. Consani garnered over 4 million followers on TikTok from her behind-the-scenes runway and dancing videos. She was also on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list and was named Fashion's New It Girl by E! News. The Model of the Year award recognizes the global impact of a model who over the last 12 months has dominated the industry and awards a model with an influence that transcends the catwalk. The Model of the Year is someone who has made an outstanding contribution to the industry, garnering numerous editorial and advertising campaigns throughout the year. Previous winners of this award include Bella and Gigi Hadid, Naomi Campbell, and Kate Moss, among many, many others. Nava Mao, the first transgender woman nominated for supporting actress in a limited or anthology series or movie at the Emmys this year, helped to present the award to Consani. In her speech, Consani thanked those who have paved the way for her to receive this award. Quote, "I am the first trans woman to win this award, but I can't accept this award without thanking those who came before me," she said. Specifically, the Black trans women who really fought for the space I'm in today. Dominique Jackson, Connie Fleming, Aaron Rose Phillips, and countless more who fought for the space that allowed me to flourish. Consani is also an activist, speaking out in support of LGBTQ+ rights. Quote, "Now, more than ever, it's an important conversation that should be had about how to truly support and uplift one another within this industry, especially those who have been made to feel insignificant, because change is more than possible. It is needed." If you enjoy content like this, make sure to subscribe. Transpositions Weekly is the first and only weekly trans news show in the universe, and we need your support to keep this show going. Contribute at patreon.com/thetranspositions. Spread the word all over social media to let people know we're here, and tell us what stories matter to you by joining the community on Discord. Discord, of course, is where the memes live, and our meme of the week was posted by Cadence. And if you want to aid your trans friends by helping them better align with their gender with all your strength, join us. Also, if you have good news concerning trans people you'd like to see reported on, you can tell us about that in the Discord as well. For the Transpositions, I've been Ember Belrad.